this is the season we'll reintroduce the classic Kelly Green, and I'm super excited. And it's why we're bringing it back. We really took the feedback seriously over the years, and we'll finally be able to see it on the field.
A storied history and tradition that embodies the city. The colors incorporate a renewal of past legacies.
It is the history of this franchise that is the essence of why we are fans.
The moments and memories that are ingrained in the minds of generations past
They give it to Smith and they stop him again! They stop him again! Gives off inside, running over, coming up the right side.
The men who don those green and silver winged helmets.
What does it mean to be a Philadelphia Eagle?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sunday Night Football, Week 7 of the NFL season. The Eagles look to bounce back from a loss in MetLife Stadium last week, as tonight they debut the not-so-new Kelly Green jerseys against the 5-1 Miami Dolphins. Welcome to the Philly Sports Eagles pregame show, brought to you by SeatGeek. Use code PhillySportSports and $20 off your first purchase. My name is Ben Goldstein. I am joined by Sam Hines. Sam, welcome to Week 7.
Welcome to Week 7. We've been, as Kelly Clarkson likes to say, we've been waiting all day for Sunday night. It's almost finally here. Biggest game of the season so far for the Eagles, and the game that us Eagles fans have been waiting for a very long time, as we've been asking for the Kelly Greens to be back for a while, and they're finally here.
Yeah, it's the first time since, I think, 1995 that the Eagles are wearing the Kelly Green uniforms, and they will debut them tonight on Sunday Night Football against the Miami Dolphins. And what you said, the biggest game of the season. We'll get to that in a little bit. We will start with the quarterback matchup, and it's a little bit of a maybe a revenge game for Jalen Hurts. Not really sure how to put this one, but what was it, 4 or 5 years ago in the national championship game for Alabama, Jalen Hurts got the start. He was benched at halftime for now Dolphins starting quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, who has looked really, really good this season. But we'll start with Jalen Hurts, who is coming off probably one of, if not his worst game as an Eagle. Hurts has a record of 5-1 in 2023 with 1,542 passing yards, a completion percentage of 66.2%. 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, passer rating of 84.7. He also has 253 rushing yards with 5 rushing touchdowns. Sam, 3 interceptions from Jalen Hurts last week in the loss to the Jets. What were your takeaways from him last week and the offense as a whole?
So the biggest takeaway from Jalen last week and this season has been the turnovers. If you want to go ahead and nitpick every single turnover and say that this one was actually somebody else's fault, or this one the offensive line broke down, or the only one that you could really do so far is that one to Dallas Goedert, where that one really just dropped out of his hands. But last week, Jalen was responsible for at least 2 of those turnovers, and that's just been the theme so far this season for him. Last year, he only had 6 interceptions. This year, he's already up to 7. And him not being able to take care of the ball has finally come back to hurt this Eagles offense and this Eagles team. When you turn the ball over 4 times in a game, you should not be still able to win the game on the final drive, but they were, and it really came back to bite them last week. And I think that's got to be your number one takeaway from the offense as a whole last week, because they did have the Swift fumble, they had the dropped pass that turned into an interception by Goddard is just how sloppy they were. It seemed like that they were a team that kind of walked into MetLife with all the injuries that the Jets had and just expected to win that game without really having to show up. And they did not show up, but the Jets showed up a little bit more. And another takeaway that I would have from last week is the no running the ball. One of the biggest things for the Jets last week was their corners were out in Sauce Gardner. But that doesn't mean they should completely go away from the run game. The Jets were a really bad team defending the run. And while we did try it a few times, it definitely was not enough. The running game is such a big part of the running game is getting it established and keep going to it. Just because you have 2 or 3 runs early in the game that don't work out doesn't mean that you should just completely go away from it. And I think, and with the way that Jalen was turning the ball over and the way that the offensive line was playing with all the injuries that they had on that side on that position group last game, I think that running the ball definitely should have been more of a focus of this offseason or of this offense last game. And like I said, no Lane Johnson last game was another big takeaway of how important he is to this Eagles offense. Jack Driscoll came in and was extremely bad in his couple snaps, and you can't really expect too much of him coming in the middle of a game, especially a younger player who has a lot of inexperience against a good Jets pass rush. But it just shows to you that how good Lane is and how much sometimes we can take for granted that the right side of that offensive line is going to be locked down and there's going to be no pressure from there all the time and no sacks over the last 2 years on Johnson. So I think that was one of the biggest takeaways, but luckily he'll be back today. So hopefully we can kind of get the sloppiness fixed a little bit tonight and have a little bit more focus on the offensive end.
Yes, we will. And so here is your first look at the new Kelly Greens on the field. They look really good.
They look amazing. The Eagles did a great job getting these back and a great job. The real reason that we have all these cool alternate uniforms in the NFL this season is because of the Philadelphia Eagles and owner Jeffrey Lurie pushing to take away the 1 helmet per team rule, which was always such a stupid rule, but he finally got it approved, and the Eagles fans are definitely benefiting from that so far.
Here's Jalen Hurts wearing the Kelly Green with the rest of the offense. These videos are from John Clark on Twitter. I'm excited. If they don't win in these Kelly Green uniforms, the city might burn down. Like, it might be bad tonight. But we'll see. So today against the Dolphins defense is not the greatest, we'll say. Jalen Hurts needs to bounce back today. What should we expect from Hurts tonight against this Dolphins defense?
Well, I think the expectation for Jalen today, just like every game, should be extremely high. When you're put as one of those elite quarterbacks in the NFL, a guy who's getting paid over $250 million as a $250 million plus contract, you should be expected to come out every single game and be at your best. While that's not going to happen every time, that is just what comes with that pedigree. And I think that today we should expect a bounce back game from Jalen. He has not been as good as he was last year, and it's okay to admit that. He has not, and turnovers has been a big part of that. But when you're going against a team who puts up a ton of points, but also allows a lot of points, you're going to need Jalen and this offense as a whole to really be clicking on all cylinders tonight to be able to keep this team in the game and be able to outscore the Dolphins. And I think that with the Dolphins and a few injuries, which we'll get to later, that they have on their defense, they've struggled on the road. They got completely ran over by the Buffalo Bills, and they've had a few other games on the road where it's been close. So I think that we should definitely expect a bounce-back game from Jalen tonight. In reality, I wouldn't be surprised if he turns the ball over again a few times tonight and this offense kind of struggles a little bit, just because that's what we've seen all year so far. It's kind of at that point now where we're six games through. Obviously this is the 7th game that until we kind of see the offense click on all cylinders, it's kind of hard to just expect that because they have not played like the team they were last year. Against the Rams was probably their best offensive game as a whole, but even then they really struggled in the red zone. The Eagles brought in Julio Jones to hopefully try to help out in the red zone. So the expectation for Jalen definitely should be to have a huge game and a bounce back game, and that's definitely what's going to be needed. But from my standpoint, it's hard to just really expect that until we kind of just see them all put it together in one game, and then hopefully can keep that train rolling.
Yeah, I want to talk about Julio Jones for a little bit. Earlier this week, the Eagles signed Julio Jones, who was in Tampa Bay. Now he's in Philadelphia. This might be the last dance for Julio Jones. He's out there looking for a ring so he can call it a career. What should we expect with Julio Jones as an Eagle? Is he going to get a lot of receptions? We already have problems spreading the ball out.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that should be talked about with Julio Jones is that the Eagles fans need to have proper expectations with him. When you hear the name Julio Jones, you think of that dominant wide receiver who's going to be a future Hall of Famer with the Atlanta Falcons. And the reality is that he's just not that kind of player anymore. And if you as an Eagles fan or anyone who covers the Eagles or anything like that expects him to be that type of player, then you're just kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. But Julio Jones can definitely still be an impact player in this league. We saw last year with Tampa Bay that he still was able to make some plays down the field. He's made some good contested catches. He didn't have a single drop last season in Tampa Bay, which is really good, obviously. So I think that we shouldn't expect him to obviously get any more catches than AJ or Devontae. But one of the things that I do think is that Quez has been put on the IR. While OZ has played well in some limited snaps, he is not really that experienced going down to the deep ends of the postseason. So I think one of the things we've seen Julio kind of be making big plays, and ironically not so big plays against us in the postseason a few years ago. But he's that guy that has gone on few deep postseason runs. And one of the big things too that I don't think is a coincidence is that Devontae Smith was on the injury report with a hamstring injury this week. He is playing. He will be playing, but it is worth noting that he was limited in practice and missed practice for that. So I think they just kind of brought him in as insurance, just in case anyone does go down. But in terms of what he's going to get on the field, I would not be surprised if they kind of move Smith into the slot a little bit. We saw him in college kind of move all around, but ever since he's come to the Eagles, he's stayed on the outside. But I do think you're going to see probably 20 snaps tonight with Julio out there, probably him a lot on the outside with AJ on the outside and Devontae on the inside. Going forward, I think he can have a bigger role as Quez continues to be out. But tonight, I think he's just going to get a few snaps, try to get his feet wet, and hopefully can help us out in the red zone as he's a great jump ball target. And like I said, he had no drops last year, so he'll definitely be someone that we'll look to lean on once we get down to the red zone and help out with our struggles down there.
All right, let's move on to the Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa is their starter. He is having a career year. He is 5-1 with a 1,876 passing yards, completion percentage of 71.1, 14 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That's a pass rating of 114.1, 16 rushing yards, no rushing touchdowns. The Eagles are getting a lot of defensive help this week as returning is Jalen Carter, who did not play last week with an ankle injury, Darius Slay, who was out last week with a knee injury, and Sidney Brown finally returns as he was out for the last 4 games with a hamstring injury. The Dolphins also have not played great competition. The only team they lost to was the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. Other than that, kind of like the Eagles, they haven't really played anybody. So what should we expect from the Dolphins and Tua tonight?
Yeah, like you said, the Dolphins have not really played that great of teams. And then when they did play a team with a good defense in Buffalo, they got completely outmatched in that game. And one of the biggest things for Miami is that they use their home field advantage of the weather and sometimes playing in a dome definitely to their advantage. They've been playing a lot better at home than on the road so far this season. We saw them struggle a little bit in New England as well earlier in the season. They ended up pulling out the win, but their offense wasn't exactly clicking on all cylinders. But with their offense and how they're going right now, it's going to be hard to expect anything else than a ton of points, a ton of yards from them today. The Dolphins love to use motion in their offense to kind of get their guys going. Tyreek Hill, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. Jalen Waddle, one of the fastest wide receivers in the NFL. They will run them around in the backfield. They will get them almost like USFL, where they have a running start before they get up to the line, and they have great timing on those plays where they snap the ball exactly as those guys start to move forward, so that way it's not an illegal motion play. But those guys are already running before the ball's even snapped, and they already can pick up a lot of speed before the ball's even snapped, and that can hurt a lot of defenses who are playing a little bit on the flat-footed. If you're not ready to run with these guys, you're going to get burnt. So I think one of the things too is they do well is they run the ball really well. A-Chain is out for them. He's on the IR, but they still got good running backs, and they've shown a commitment this year to run the ball as well. Last year they were just a track team where they were just bombs away, throwing it up, and not really using the run, and that was kind of their downfall last year as teams were able to figure out how to stop their high-flying passing offense, but then they could not run the ball. But they've done a great job this year of being a team that can mix and match on offense. So the Eagles are definitely going to have their hands full tonight, and this is not one of those games where we should expect the Eagles defense to hold the team to under 20 points. I think if you hold this team to 24 or less points, that is a win, and I think that if you do that, you're going to win the game.
That's for sure. Let's look at some position advantages tonight here in Week 7 on Sunday Night Football. Sam, what are your position advantages for this tonight's game?
So I think one of the biggest advantages in this game, before the game before about 30 minutes ago, I would not have said this, but now is the Eagles wide receivers versus the Dolphins secondary. The only reason I would not say that I would not have said that was because the Dolphins have an amazing cornerback and Xavier Howard, but he is now out for this game, which a lot of people thought he was going to play, but I guess he was not ready to go. So Xavier Howard would have followed A.J. Brown around the field, and Devontae still would have had a good matchup on their second cornerback, but Xavier Howard is one of those guys that can lock down a number one wide receiver. But with him out, I think the Eagles have a massive advantage. Jalen Ramsey, the star cornerback that they traded for in the offseason, he got hurt. He's practicing, but he's not playing yet. So they were already on to their backup corner, starting over there across from Xavier Howard, and now they're going to have multiple backups out there today. So that's definitely something the Eagles are going to have to take advantage of. The Dolphins wide receivers versus our secondary is an advantage that I think the Dolphins are going to have today. Obviously, the Eagles have great cornerbacks in Darius Slay and James Bradbury, but those guys are not speed corners. They're a little on the older side. Bradbury is a bigger, more physical guy, and the Dolphins wide receivers are speed. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Eagles corners are going to line up against them and how they're going to play them. And Reed Blankenship is out today, and the Eagles safeties as a whole have not played great, and we don't just have a lot of talent back there. Like you said, Sidney Brown is going to be back for this game, but he is a rookie and has missed 4 games, so he's not going to be playing. He has not played a lot, so he's a lot of inexperience back there. So I think the Dolphins wide receivers are definitely going to try to take advantage of an inexperienced secondary. We don't even know who's going to be starting at slot corner today, with Bradley Roby now on the injury report. And then my last one is the Eagles D-line versus the Dolphins offensive line. The Dolphins offensive line, if you were to just look at their stats, you would think that they were the best offensive line in the league. But Mike McDaniels does a great job of having Tua get rid of the ball early. Tua last year, unfortunately, had the game where he had the concussion. Everybody remembers he's had multiple concussions. So he unfortunately is potentially one big hit away from having a serious injury. So Mike McDaniels has really tailored their offense around keeping Tua healthy. They're the fastest team in the league to time to throw from snap. They've only given up 6 sacks on the season, but Tua can get rattled. He can start throwing picks, and he's not great on the move. If you can flush him out to his right side, he's not great throwing across his body, as obviously he's a lefty. So the Eagles' defensive line is better than the Dolphins' offensive line, and they need to get to the quarterback fast tonight to be able to disrupt the game plan of Mike McDaniels and the Dolphins' offense.
There you go. Those are your position advantages for tonight. Now we move on to the notable matchups. There's a few of them tonight, and one of them for me is the quarterback matchup tonight, Sam.
Did you say quarterback or cornerback?
Quarter, like the guys that throw the ball.
Yeah. So Jalen Hurts and if you want to have a fun drinking game for tonight, every time that they mention that Jalen Hurts was benched for Tua Tagovailoa in the national championship game, take a drink. You might not make it to the end of the game because they're going to be talking about it a lot. But we all remember Jalen getting benched for Tua in the national championship game where Tua brought them back to win the national championship when they were in Alabama. And then next year, Tua got hurt, and then Jalen came in and led them to the national championship game, and then Tua won it the next week. And these guys are great friends. They have great respect for each other. They both obviously came out of the same Alabama team, and it's amazing as you see Mac Jones came out of that team as well to see how much talent they had in that one quarterback room. And I think it's going to be a good time. I believe, is this the first time they're playing against each other in the NFL?
It is the
I
first
think
time
Tua
they're
was
playing each
hurt
other.
the last time.
Yep.
Yeah, Tua was hurt the last time we played the Dolphins. So yeah, so it's going to be it's going to be cool for them to finally get back on the field together and play together. Like I said, they're great friends who just had a couple national championships together in Alabama, and it'll definitely be cool to see them sharing the same field again tonight. And it's amazing because those guys were fighting for a spot together, and now they're both arguably, one of the top 5 probably quarterbacks in the NFL. Both of them probably occupy 2 of those spots. So it's just crazy to see how 2 college teammates like that can take their games to the next level in the NFL and both have success. And just goes to show you that even if you're a backup, it doesn't really matter that much. As you just got to get in the right system.
That's for sure. And it's great to watch on TV, but you know what's even better? To see it in person. And where can you get tickets to see it in person, Sam?
SeatGeek.
Yes, you can. SeatGeek is the best way to get your tickets. And they're sponsoring today's live stream. SeatGeek is a ticketing app that makes it so easy to buy your tickets. All you got to do, download the SeatGeek app and use code Philly Sports Report right there and save $20 off your first SeatGeek order. Again, that is code Philly Sports Report. Save $20 off your first SeatGeek order. And now, Sam, Philly Sports Reports has been extremely hot with our SeatGeek standout stars. For the Phillies, we've been very good. The Eagles last week wasn't so good, but let's rebound tonight, Sam. Who are your SeatGeek standout stars for tonight?
All right, so this is a guy that I've wrote a lot in the beginning of the season as a standout star, and he has really come to light in these last few games, finally got his cast off, and he's back home tonight playing in the Kelly Greens, which he watched the Eagles play in when he grew up. Hassan Reddick, he's come on already these last few games since getting his cast off. He has been incredible. Last week he had a great game. 2 weeks ago he had a great game. 3 weeks ago he had a great game. And Hassan Reddick he is just about as clutch of a pass rusher I think I've ever seen as an Eagles fan or just watching the Eagles. It seems like anytime that there's a big game, he really shows up. And then anytime there's a big moment in a game, he really shows up. He's getting the nickname of the closer. Maybe the Phillies could swap him and Craig Kimbrell. But he seems to just come in clutch late in these games. And I think that, like I said earlier, the biggest thing with the Dolphins is getting to Tua to disrupt their offensive game plan, and I think Reddick's going to do that tonight. And then Jalen. I mean, I got to go Jalen just because it's such a huge bounce back and a huge spotlight matchup for him. This is the game where people are going to look and say, Jalen, this is why we pay you this money. You need to come out and win us this game. Obviously, it can't all be him, but this is one of those games where if we lose this game, coming off a bad week last week, people are going to start questioning. People are going to start doubting the Eagles. And I think that this is just a big statement game for Jalen. He will never say it publicly. As like I said, him and Tua are great friends, but there has to be a little bit of a rivalry there with him taking his spot at Alabama. No hate to Tua. He doesn't have any hate to Tua, but he definitely is going to want to go out there and put on a show against his old college teammate. So I think that Jalen definitely is going to be a SeatGeek standout star tonight, and hopefully he can have a huge bounce back game.
That would be nice. That was your SeatGeek standout stars. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring again. We move over to the inactives tonight. It'll be for the Eagles, Tanner McKee, Rashad Penny, Reed Blankenship, Bradley Roby, Patrick Johnson, Moro Ojomo, and Albert those are your Eagles inactives. For the Dolphins, it'll be Robbie Chosen, Skylar Thompson, Kelvin Joseph, Xavier Howard, Connor Williams, and Tyler Croft. Those are your Dolphins inactive. Sam, how will these affect these two teams on Sunday Night Football in Week 7?
Well, the biggest one for the Eagles is Reed Blankenship. The Eagles safeties were really weak coming into the season, and it's just been a rotation of guys back there. And he's been the best player at the safety position. And then Bradley Roby, guy we just brought on to play the slot, already hurt. Avonte Maddox out for the season. So I don't know. We've been kind of piecing it together as in the secondary. So the Dolphins obviously have great wide receivers. They're going to try to get those matchups against these guys that are going to be playing today. But I think for the Eagles, it's just going to show you what they need to do coming up to this trade deadline. No one's really talking about it just because of the Phillies right now, but the trade deadline in the NFL is looming very soon. And I think the Eagles are definitely going to have to make a move in the secondary to kind of bolster that secondary up, because as it is right now, they got a ton of great teams coming up, ton of great wide receivers, ton of great quarterbacks. And even going into the playoffs, it definitely is not good enough to where it needs to be. And then from the Dolphins side, already talked about it a lot, but Xavier Howard being out is massive. They're missing Jalen Ramsey, who hasn't played all year, and then to miss their other star cornerback, Xavier Howard. These guys were looked at to be the top cornerback duo coming into the season. And now that they're both out with an already weak secondary and an already weak defense, I think that's massive for us. And kind of sad that for Temple fans out there that Robbie Chosen-Anderson's not going to be making his debut back in the Link. Obviously was part of those great Temple Matt Rule teams. So for all those Temple people out there, sorry you're not going to get to see your boy Robbie tonight. But that means that Chase Claypool is going to be active, so it would be interesting to see how they use him instead of Robbie.
Yeah, and a good thing for the Eagles is Lane Johnson is back. He is going to be playing through that ankle injury he suffered in the first quarter against the Jets. That is huge for the Eagles, as the offensive line was really struggling. Jack Stoll was really struggling on that Eagles offensive line against the Jets. And having Lane Johnson back, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, maybe the best in the NFL, definitely a Hall of Famer. And the Eagles legend being back tonight is massive for the Eagles, as he will be fighting through that ankle injury. We move on to the Gamblers.
Especially just because the best talent right now with the injuries on the Dolphins defense is their defensive line, Bradley Chubb, Christian Wilkins. Those guys are going to be moving around. Bradley Chubb especially would have been lined up. They definitely would have lined him up right over Jack Driscoll, but now that Lane's going to be back in there, it's definitely huge. And we just see how amazing he is at playing through injuries, and he's got to be the toughest Philly athlete that we've seen in a long time. I mean, last year playing in the Super Bowl with the groin thing, seems like every time he goes out, he's coming right back. And for him to be playing with an injury that normally takes people 4 to 6 weeks to recover with, playing the next week is just incredible stuff, and he's just cementing his legacy with each game.
That's for sure. We move on to the Gamblers Are Us bets. Make sure to listen to the Gamblers Are Us podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Sam, hope you were listening this week. Maybe you could have gotten some advice on tonight's game between the Eagles and Dolphins. The Eagles are currently listed as -3 on the spread. Will they cover?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, the line today, because after last week's game, you would think that the Dolphins maybe would be a favorite, especially right after the game. The game immediately opened at 2.5 points in the Eagles' favor. I think that means normally when teams get 3 or 2.5 points for being home, that does mean that they think these teams are extremely even, but they're giving the Eagles the home field advantage points. So I do think the Eagles are going to cover with the points today, and I also like the over in this game. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored tonight.
Yeah, and that over-under is 52.5. Sam, what do you feel about that, over or under the 52.5?
Yeah, so I like the over tonight. I just think that with both these defenses and both these secondaries being hurt, it's going to be a lot of big plays tonight. The Dolphins are going to try to take advantage of it. The Eagles are going to try to take advantage of it. While I do think that the Eagles should try and run the ball more than they did last week, it's going to be hard for them, and they're going to be tempted to really air it out tonight. And I think that whenever you're playing the Dolphins, you need to be able to score in the 30s to be able to beat them, and their defense is giving up 24, 25, 26 points a game just about. So now that we're saying this, it's going to be like a 21-17 game, and it's going to shock everybody, but I do like the over tonight.
Yeah, and your locks for tonight. What bets are you locking in on the Gamblers RS bets segment?
Yeah, so I think one of my locks for today, they didn't use the tush push last week. It was one of the first weeks they hadn't used it, so I think they're going to go back to it again tonight with a Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown. And I also like Devontae's over in receiving yards. A.J. Brown has been absolutely incredible these last few games. He's second in the league in receiving yards behind Tyreek Hill. He's well on his way to having another 1,000-plus yard season. He might even break his Eagles franchise record from last year. But I think that the Eagles like to spread the ball around, and they like to make sure that all their guys are happy and involved. And I just think that tonight is going to be a Devontae night. And one thing, too, is Devontae is a big-time player. We've seen in these bigger games that Devontae is the guy who steps up and has the big games. Last year in the playoffs, he had huge games, Super Bowl huge games. These big primetime games, Devontae always seems to have really good games. So I like Devontae tonight. And then this is a long shot bet, but if you want to throw a dollar on it, just a little sprinkle, a Julio Jones anytime touchdown is really good odds for tonight. Dollar wouldn't hurt you to just throw it on there and see what happens. Like I said, I think one of the biggest reasons they brought him in is for his red zone presence and his sure hand ability. So I would not be surprised if they try to throw a little fade route or something like that in the corner of the end zone and try to get Julio started out on the right note on prime time here with his first Eagles game and possibly his first Eagles touchdown.
Yeah, for Julio Jones' first game as an Eagle, he's wearing the Kelly Greens. That's pretty cool. We got a little bit of time with the 8:25 kickoff tonight, so let's look at the Gamblers RS's clues, parlays, and think what Gus thinks about this, or not Gus, what Sam thinks about this. So the Eagles money line, Tua Tagovailoa over 1.5 passing touchdowns, over 225.5 points for the Dolphins. A.J. Brown 82.5 over receiving yards, and Tua Tagovailoa over 276.5 passing yards. Gus, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I like it. I think when you always go with the overs, it can kind of be risky because the overs aren't always going to hit every single time, as they're always the most fun to bet. But like I said earlier, I think that this is going to be a really high-scoring game, and I do think that a lot of the overs, even though they are set really high for this game, I do like a lot of them just because these teams' defenses, while the Eagles' defense has been pretty good, these offenses are just high-flying, and they're the two top offenses in the league. And normally when those collide, it is a shootout. So I definitely like this parlay, and he got a good odd boost there. So hopefully he can bring in some money.
There you go. Here's the other one. The last one was from Gus. I think this one's from Scott. The Eagles -3. Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown. Devontae Smith 55.5. Over for the receiving yards. Over 252.5 passing yards for Hurts. And Tyreek Hill anytime touchdown. I feel like a couple of these are just a gimme. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Smith. What do you feel about this?
Yeah, he's got two of my bets in there, so obviously I like that. Or three of mine, actually. So obviously I like that. Jalen passing yards can always be tricky just because if we get out to a lead, they will start running the ball. They'll start running him. So personally for me, I normally stay away from betting the Jalen passing yards just because they are so tricky to kind of manage. But I do think that the Eagles are going to be in a close game today where they're going to have to be trying to score till the very end. So I think both of those are smart bets, and hopefully they can both take home some money tonight along with an Eagles win.
Yeah, make sure you go follow the Gamblers RS podcast on Twitter and Facebook. So keys to the game tonight, Sam, for the Kelly Green debut. What are your keys for tonight's Week 7 Sunday Night Football?
All right. Well, normally I go with 2, but I'm going to go with 3 keys to the game tonight. Number 1, it's obvious. Do not turn the ball over. The Eagles' offense has been turning the ball over at an alarming rate so far this season. It finally came back to bite them. And if you give the Dolphins extra possessions, you will not win that game. Dolphins' offense is great, and it's going to be hard to win this game regardless. And giving them extra possessions just will almost guarantee you a loss. My second one is something that we didn't really talk about tonight, but I think that the Eagles are going to try to control the clock a little bit with the running game. The Eagles did not use the run at all last week, and I think that's a big mistake. Seems like whenever DeAndre Swift is back in his hometown of Philly, he kind of goes off a little bit, has a great game. So hopefully the Eagles can kind of try to keep the ball out of the Dolphins' hands a little bit. You don't want to play scared because the Eagles are not the weaker opponent here, so they should not be trying to be scared and kind of steal this game away by running the clock out. But I do think it is smart in any game to just kind of control the clock. And normally the team that controls the time of possession, they normally win the game. And then my last key to the game is going to be get to Tua. Tua, like I said, is the number one quarterback in getting the ball out, fastest from snap to release. Dolphins have only given up six sacks this year because of it. So if the Eagles can get to Tua early, make him roll to his right, throw across his body, I think that we're going to have a lot of success on this game defensively. The Eagles' defensive line can get to Tua.
There you go. Those are your keys to the game. Now, Sam, I know you're very excited about this. The Kelly Greens are back tonight. I have some clips lined up. But, Sam, everybody has a Kelly Green story. What is your Kelly Green story, and why are you so excited that the Kelly Greens are returning?
Yeah, so I mean, I am a big fan of the Kelly Greens. I think that they are just the best uniforms in sports. I feel like I'm not being, a homer here. I've always loved the Kelly Greens, and even back when they had them originally back for that one game in 2011, I had it. I had a LaShawn McCoy Kelly Green jersey that I wore to my school pictures. So my school pictures in 5th grade all have me with my LaShawn McCoy Kelly Green jersey. So even back when I was a little 5th grader, I always loved the Kelly Greens. Unfortunately, those Kelly Greens were not as nice as these Kelly Greens. I still have that LaShawn McCoy jersey, and this one that I'm wearing now is a whole lot better than that one, with the new logos on with the logos on the side, and the color's just a lot better. But yeah, it's just for a lot of people who grew up with these Eagles Kelly Green jerseys, it must feel really nice to just see them back. And when you think Eagles, you think Kelly Green, in my opinion, just from these guys from Randall and Reggie and Seth and Mike Quick and Jaws and Harold Carmichael. Those are the guys that you think of when you think of the Eagles, and you think Kelly Green. So I think it's massive just for the city and a lot of the Eagles fans who are a little bit older to get that nostalgia back. We all obviously love the Phillies powder blues as well, and it's awesome that they wear them every Thursday and have brought them into the playoffs. You see those all around the ballpark, and even for us who didn't get to see them play in them, it's still great to kind of have those out. I'm still waiting on the Sixers to bring out the 01 black jerseys, but we don't have to talk about them. But I think it was just a great decision by the Eagles, and hopefully it's here to stay. This new helmet rule is not going away. The Eagles Kelly Green jerseys were the top selling jersey release of all time for American sports, which is just incredible. So it shows how much the Eagles fans wanted it back. You see both of us rocking our new Kelly Green jerseys today. I got a new Kelly Green hat to match the jersey. So the Eagles definitely are rolling the money in from this release as well. But I think it's just seeing the field for us who never saw them wear these jerseys, seeing the field covered in the logos, seeing the middle of the field with the logos, gives us a little taste of what it must have been like back at the Vet back in those days. And even without them ever bringing them back, they were one of the more popular jerseys that you'd see in the stadium. But now it's going to be all Kelly Green. And even when I went to the open practice this year, it was all Kelly Green, and they did a great job with them.
Yeah, they look really good. Even the pants look incredible as well. There's the field for tonight. Another great touch. My thing is with them is that the Eagles, they changed the color. It's a new chapter of Eagles football that started in 1996, and they have been much more successful with the midnight greens. So I see a lot of people saying the Kelly Green should be the This should be the number one jersey, and they should go back to them permanently. I disagree. I think it's a new chapter. Eagles didn't have a lot of success wearing the Kelly green, the midnight green. They have had a Super Bowl championship, 4 straight NFC championship games in the early 2000s. So I think the midnight green is not going anywhere, but I do think these Kelly greens will, of course, make an appearance once or twice every season for the foreseeable future.
I mean, I would love for the Kelly greens to be the whole look, the complete jersey for the season. I know it's not going to happen, but I'm happy that they brought them back, and hopefully they'll use them 2 times a year like they're doing now. I hope they don't get rid of the black jerseys in the future, because I love the black jerseys so much. They are a great look. The Eagles have great uniforms regardless. They're not one of those teams where you look at their uniforms and they're disgusting, or you hate them like the Jets uniforms last week, or the Rams or something like that. But hopefully this is here to stay, and I think it's going to be. And I think just getting it back as an alternate like the Phillies do is definitely a good idea for the team. And I'm excited to see them live in action tonight, and then going up against the Bills again later in the season.
Yep, and the best way to get your Kelly green merchandise, you get your overalls, you get your bracelets, you get everything, is on FOCO. FOCO is the new sponsor of Philly Sports Reports. Save 10% off at any purchase at FOCO with that link right there. It's linked in the description. Or use code PSR10 on all in-stock items, excluding the overalls and the bracelets. But yeah, if you want to get some new merch, go to FOCO. Sam, we have made it to the final point of this stream. Our predictions. Make sure to put your predictions in the chat. Sam, what is your prediction for Week 7 Sunday Night Football between the Eagles and Dolphins?
So earlier in the week, I told you that I might be doing something I've never done on this show before. And what I've never done in this show, and I pick every week because with my true belief. I try to be as objective as I can picking the game. Obviously, I'm an Eagles fan, but I try to be objective of how I pick the game. But every game last year and so far this year, I feel like the Eagles were going to win. Earlier in the week, I felt like they were going to lose. But now with the injuries to the Dolphins secondary, and I think just the general vibes being back up in the city, and I do trust this Eagles team. I was very down on them after last week's game, but I do think that it was a wake-up call for them, and I do think that they're going to bounce back. The Eagles have not lost 2 straight games in the last 2 seasons so far, and I think that trend is going to continue tonight. I think the Eagles are going to win 31-27.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear. I was getting nervous for a second. I'd be nervous there. I agree with that. I was also down on this Eagles team, especially with the Phillies losing, and got my confidence even more down the drain. But after a Phillies big win last night and seeing these Kelly green uniforms on the field, something happened where it was like, the Eagles are going to win this game. And it's going to be a close one. It's going to be high scoring, and it's going to be fun. I think the Eagles are going to win this game 34-30. It's going to be really close. It's going to be a nail-biter, but I think the Eagles pull it out back in the Kelly green uniforms, a little bit of a bounce back from last week. The 30 points, I don't think it's going to be easy for the Dolphins to get those 30 points. If the Eagles defense still plays a strong game, they just get overpowered by the Dolphins offense. It's so good. So I think the Eagles are going to win 34-30. We have a 48-31 score. My God, 48 points.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a little much.
One thing, too, obviously this is a regular season game, but this is just about as excited for a regular season game as I've been probably over the last 2 years, just because last year it felt like we were kind of sleepwalking through the season just because it was every game they showed up, they dominated, they won, and we moved on to the next game. So I feel like this is the first game where they could definitely lose this game for sure, and this game has true big game feel. And this team has shown that they win big games, primetime games, important games. They went to the Super Bowl last year. This Dolphins team has not really had to do that. And while this is just Week 7, this game feels way more important than that. And I think the Eagles are going to show up and show that they play well in big games and walk out of here with the win. And then we move on to tomorrow with the Phils.
That's for sure. not just as their big game, it's a great uniform matchup as well. So excited to see those two uniforms on the field together. That's going to do it from us here on the Philly Sports Eagles pregame show, brought to you by SeatGeek. Make sure to use code Philly Sports Report at SeatGeek. Save $20 off your first purchase. Like and subscribe on YouTube and press the notification bell to get notified every time we post a new video. Facebook and Twitter, thank you for watching over there. Make sure to follow us on all of our social medias: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, Threads, everywhere. Link is in the description. Make sure to go to phillysportsports.com after the game and read Sam Hines' post-game recap for tonight's game. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring. Thank you for FOCO for sponsoring Philly Sports.
Your mic is out. But go Birds!